Hi, I'm Gruenke, founder of The Balanced Runner, and I've been helping runners from beginner to Olympian improve their form and performance since 2003. And I'm here today with another stuck-at-home running form tip from my living room to yours, helping you use this time as an opportunity to become a better runner. Hopefully, I won't need that intro for, well, someday. Leroy fans, that gray blob in the back, that's Leroy. She's sacked out on the sofa, but she's moved to her nest. I'm here today to talk about running on a treadmill. And maybe I should have done this earlier on in lockdown because maybe more people were. But in any case, it's going to be useful for you if running on a treadmill is part of what you do. And, it'd be useful for you if running on a treadmill is part of what you do. And, most runners prefer not to run on a treadmill. You don't get the benefits of being outside, and it just doesn't feel as great, and it can be super boring. So granted that it's not most runners' first choice, but it's better than not running at all in some situations. So let's look at the biggest mistakes, the 4 biggest mistakes that people make, and what you should do instead. So I don't have a treadmill. We're going to pretend I have a treadmill. So welcome to Mrs. Rogers' neighborhood of make-believe, where I will try not to step on the mic. It's about treadmill width, isn't it? So mistake number 1 is running right against the console. Here's my console in our neighborhood of make-believe. So this is the front of the treadmill where you have the control panel. You've got railings on the sides. And we naturally want to move forward when we run. And so you'll tend to keep moving forward bit by bit until you hit a limit and you can't move forward anymore. And then you'll stay there as the belt churns through, it goes that way, through underneath you. But what that does is it means that you are now not free to use your arms naturally because you're trying not to accidentally hit the control panel, or, normally this thing is a bit higher and would be in your way. And you're also not free to lean forward. So accidentally hit the control panel, or, normally this thing is a bit higher and would be in your way. And you're also not free to lean forward. So then people tend to rear back and they start doing funny things with their arms. Now, you naturally, of course, do not want to go off the back either. And that is also sort of subconsciously there, that like there's a cliff behind you somewhere and you can't see where it is. So the next time you climb on a treadmill and the back of the belt, and then just make a note of what that distance is, so you can keep it constant where you are on the railings. It's your own treadmill at home. You could even put little tape marks on the railings on the side so you know where you should be. And then just every once in a while you're running, check and make sure you've left that gap, that you're running by your marks, you're where you need to be, so that you're free to have a natural body movement. So that's number 1. Number 2 is running always on an incline. Now, I know a lot of people say that you should always put your treadmill on a slight incline. You don't need the console anymore. Because on a treadmill you don't have wind resistance, and so that makes, or air resistance, and so that makes running a little easier, and it means you use your glutes and your hamstrings less, and so you compensate for that by putting your treadmill on a little bit of an incline. And that whole thing does make sense, but the problem with that is that it builds a habit of always running slightly uphill, and like neuromuscularly you come to expect that the ground that your foot is going to land on is a little higher than the ground you took off from. And so if you ever then go out and try to run on the flat outside, it's going to really feel like a pounding, because your foot is going to drop a little bit beyond where you expect the ground to be each time. And your brain, your nervous system, was regulating where your pelvis was, how flexed your hip joints were expected to be, and then that extra little drop is really quite a jolt, even if it's just a infinitesimal amount. So don't build that habit. Instead, vary your incline and sometimes have it be flat. You're running on a treadmill, it's not natural. It's not going to be natural. Nothing, there's no set of settings that you can put on a treadmill that make it completely like natural running. So sometimes let part of that unnaturalness be that your glutes and hamstrings are just not going to work as hard as they do out on level ground. And, sometimes do more of an incline, and you can put it on that 0.5 or 1% incline from time to time. That's fine too, but just make sure you include some flat running. And you can get a little creative with that air resistance. If you position a fan directly in front of you, you can create some air resistance for yourself. And I'm sure somewhere out there, there's somebody who's going to come up with a treadmill that calibrates the speed of the treadmill with the speed of the fan, so you do get the equivalent of running outdoors, running upright. And partially, this is as a response to running too close to the console, like I just explained, so that you kind of rear back. And partially, and actually much more significantly, this is because of the lack of air resistance. So kind of across all sports that involve speed, air resistance is a thing. Even in walking, air resistance is a measurable thing. Strategy that we spontaneously choose for reducing the amount of air resistance that we have to deal with is leaning forward or bending forward. And again, that's just across the board. It's not just running. And so it is actually correlated with improved running economy to lean forward when you're running on solid ground. But that benefit doesn't exist on a treadmill without a fan because there's no air resistance to overcome. However, again, just like having your treadmill on an incline all the time, not running leaning forward is building a bad set of movement habits that are going to translate poorly to running overground, as they say, on terra firma. So don't build that habit. Just because you don't have air resistance making you feel like you need to lean into it, well, tempting digression, but I'll stop myself. Just because that stimulus isn't there doesn't mean you can't lean forward. You certainly can. And when you lean forward, your stride length opens up. It's easier to run faster. You'd use your glutes anyway. Look at me with the finger. You use your glutes anyway because the main function of your glutes in running is to hold your head up, as I've said before, and keep you from face planting in mid-stance when your head is in front of your pelvis. And it doesn't even have to be, it might even just be that much. That's a forward lean. That's more of a forward lean. And so you will, if you lean forward on a treadmill, you will actually use your glutes more than if you run upright. And you want to be able to get that activation in there. And hamstrings as well, to balance you. So you can still think, I will put links to all of my, my video series on leaning forward, how to lean forward and how to troubleshoot your forward lean in the description below. So just click on show more in the description below and you'll see links to that. So there's a whole lot more information there about how to create this forward lean in a way that's healthy and sustainable and going to work for you. And so you need to be a little more conscious about those things to build that habit on a treadmill. But it is very much worth the effort. Also, by the way, in the description below, I'll put a link to also a lesson that I have that would be a resource for you to help you run better on a treadmill. So the fourth big mistake that people make on a treadmill, and I'm sorry, it's the thing I know that people really like about treadmills, is watching TV or reading even, which I see and kind of can't believe. And here's why. Is that you naturally, okay, two things. Actually, there are two reasons. First is that the TV screen might not be in the right place for you. It might require that you bring your head down, which is going to totally destroy your forward lean and your backside mechanics altogether, and your form overall. Just don't do that. Second thing is that no matter how hard you try not to, you are going to end up reducing the movement of your head in order to follow what you're watching on TV. And even worse, if it's in a gym where they have the subtitles on all the time and you're trying to read the subtitles, or God help us, you're actually trying to read a book with book-size writing, you will hold your head still. Your head actually needs to move when you run. It needs to go up and down as you go into that flight phase and back out of it again. Obviously, we don't want a huge amount of vertical oscillation, but there needs to be some. And second, it needs to go a bit side to side because that's your weight shift, foot to foot. And if you are reducing those movements, you are dramatically changing the way the rest of your body works. You're going to feel worse after your treadmill run. And again, it's going to build a bad set of movement habits for running outdoors. So you could still listen to things. So listen to some music, listen to a good audiobook, sometimes turn it off and just let your mind roam as if you were outside. And if you have control over your treadmill environment and you're not just dealing with whatever the gym has set up, try to be in front of a window so that you can be, because your muscle activation is also going to change. If you are looking at a distance, you're looking out, you're able to look around, and there's some relationship between the environment your body is in and what you're seeing. So that's your optimal situation. If you can't do that, have the TV off and then like try not to focus on this black thing that's like this far in, or hopefully this, at least this far in front of you, this like wall. But just like let your eyes relax, unfocus. From time to time, you can look around and then just notice what is the movement of your head, what is the movement of your body. And that's the way to make your gait as natural as possible on a treadmill, so that again, when you go to solid ground, you're going to be able to run well, and it's not going to feel weird and disorganized. And like pounding, so that then you become a runner who feel like you can only run on a treadmill, which I want to help that not happen to you. So definitely get the lesson below. Definitely look at my video series on leaning forward below. And I see I've got a question. Hi, Adelino. Nice to see you. Yeah, Adelina says, so I'm not a fan of treadmill, but sometimes we have to use it. But it's okay to change the inclination of the treadmill. Yes, yeah, definitely. As I said at the beginning, you can go back and listen at the beginning. Lindsay wants to know approximately how big should the head movements be? Well, I mean, it varies with your speed and your body. So you want your neck, it's not always your head, but you want your neck to come over the standing foot each time. So that depends on how wide your gait is. It should have some width. It should not be like on a tightrope. And then again, the longer your stride becomes, also then the bigger the overall movement is going to be. So your brain corrects for these head movements when you're running outdoors. Wear a baseball cap on a run, and you look at the world just below the edge of the brim, you'll see the bouncing. But if you don't have a reference point like that, you won't. But your brain corrects for the bouncing when you're outside, in the sense that it gives you the impression that the world you're seeing is not bouncing. But when the image that you're focusing on is small, like a TV, is close to you, and even smaller, print, then there's no way to focus your eyes on a small thing like that with your head bouncing so much. And so then you'll start to dampen that movement. So yeah, it varies. You're welcome, Merriman. It's these moments when you realize that the reality that you think is just reality that's out there is actually something that's being created in your brain. And you can use a little tool like that to get a better sense of what is reality. It's always a little bit mind-blowing. So anyway, thanks so much for coming, guys. Everybody, if you haven't subscribed to my channel, please do. Please like this video if you found it valuable so that YouTube knows to share it with other runners who need this information. Blah! I almost got through this coherently. All the great resources I have for you on balancedrunner.com. I'll see you next week.